The Zephyrian interrogation chamber was a marvel of technological brutality. Walls of living metal shifted and pulsed with bioluminescent patterns. Responding to the occupants' stress levels, the air itself was weaponized, thick with psychoactive compounds designed to break the will of even the most resilient species in the galaxy. Commander Marcus Chen hung suspended in the center of the room, his wrists and ankles bound by crystalline restraints that hummed with contained energy. The chains weren't merely physical barriers, they were quantum-locked, designed to adapt and strengthen against any force applied to them. The harder one struggled, the more unbreakable they became. The Zephyrians had tested these restraints on every major species across 17 star systems. Korthak berserkers, renowned for their unstoppable fury, had exhausted themselves against the adaptive bonds. Ethereal mind-weavers capable of bending reality with pure thought found their abilities completely neutralized. Even the silicon-based titans whose strength could crack planetary crusts had eventually surrendered to the chain's inexorable grip. But they had never tested them on a human. High Inquisitor Vexithalan glided into the chamber, his serpentine form coiling through the air with predatory grace. Multiple eyes, each the size of a human fist, focused on the bound figure before him. In his millennia of service, he had broken representatives of 412 different species. This human would be 413. "Tell me the location of the human fleet," Vexithalan hissed, his translator rendering the words in perfect English. "Your silence serves no purpose. These bonds will hold you until the stars grow cold." Marcus lifted his head, meeting the alien's gaze with steady brown eyes. Blood trickled from a cut above his left eyebrow, but his voice was calm. "You know, we have a saying back on Earth, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger." The Inquisitor's laugh was like grinding glass. "Your species' fondness for platitudes is well documented. But strength is irrelevant here. These chains grow stronger with resistance. The more you fight, the more impossible escape becomes." "Maybe," Marcus said, settling back against his restraints with an almost casual air, "but you're operating under a fundamental misunderstanding about humans." "Enlighten me." Marcus smiled, and something in that expression made Vexthalan's primary eyes narrow with unease. "You think breaking us means making us stop fighting. But for humans, fighting isn't just about physical struggle. It's about endurance. It's about outlasting whatever tries to break us." The interrogation began in earnest. Neural disruptors sent cascades of agony through Marcus's nervous system. Memory extractors probed the surface of his consciousness, seeking cracks in his mental defenses. The living walls pulsed with hypnotic patterns designed to induce compliance. Through it all, Marcus neither screamed nor begged. Instead, he spoke. He told stories of human history, of slaves who sang work songs until their masters freed them rather than listen to their defiance, of prisoners of war who tapped codes on cell walls for years, keeping their spirits alive through connection, of Arctic explorers who walked for months across impossible terrain because stopping meant death. "Your species conquers through force," Marcus said during a brief respite between torture sessions. His voice was hoarse but unbroken. "You overwhelm, you dominate, you break. But humans? We survive through sheer bloody-minded stubbornness." Days passed, then weeks. The quantum chains, designed to strengthen against resistance, found themselves in a paradoxical situation. Marcus wasn't truly fighting them. He was simply existing within them, maintaining his core self despite everything thrown at him. The chain's adaptive algorithms, designed to respond to force, began to fluctuate when faced with passive, unyielding endurance. Other Zephyrian officials began to visit the chamber. Word had spread through their command structure about the human who simply wouldn't break. Some came to observe this curiosity. Others came to suggest more extreme measures. "Perhaps we should simply execute him," suggested Sub-Commander Crixtel during one such visit. "His resistance serves no tactical purpose." Vexthalan's coils tightened with frustrated anger. "He will break. All sentience break eventually." But Marcus had entered a meditative state that the Zephyrians couldn't understand. He had retreated into the deepest part of his mind, to a place built not of memories but of principles. Every story ever told to him about human courage, every lesson learned about perseverance, every moment in human history when someone had chosen to endure rather than surrender. It all crystallized into an unshakable core of identity. The chains, meanwhile, faced an impossible equation. They were designed to adapt to and overcome resistance, but Marcus wasn't resisting in any way they could quantify. He was simply being human, in all that word's stubborn, unreasonable glory. On the 30th day, something unprecedented occurred. The quantum matrices maintaining the chain's adaptive structure began to oscillate wildly. The crystalline restraints pushed beyond their operational parameters by trying to counter-adapt to something that wasn't actually fighting them, developed stress fractures. Marcus opened his eyes as the first chain shattered. The sound was like a crystal cathedral collapsing. The remaining restraints, their quantum coherence compromised, failed in rapid succession. Marcus dropped to the chamber floor, his legs barely supporting him after a month of suspension. Fexthalon stared in disbelief as alarms began wailing throughout the facility. "Impossible," he whispered. Marcus straightened slowly, his joints protesting but his spirit unbroken. "No," he said, his voice carrying a quiet authority that made the Inquisitor recoil. "Just human." The rescue fleet arrived 6 hours later. As Marcus walked aboard the lead ship, his fellow officers marveled at his condition. Physically weakened but mentally intact, he had achieved something no being in recorded galactic history had managed. The Zephyrian chains, unbreakable, adaptive, absolute, lay in pieces behind him. Sometimes the greatest victory isn't in fighting the trap, but in refusing to let the trap change who you are. And sometimes that refusal alone is enough to shatter any chain that dares to bind the human spirit.